have the book launch of Music Generations in the Digital Age with Dr. Rafal Zaborowski. So this book looks at music engagement in the digital era, and it also investigates Japanese idol culture, and particularly looking at the rise of virtual idols. So yes, Dr. Rafal Zaborowski, he's a senior lecturer in digital culture at King's College London. He investigates the intersections of media audiences, texts and producers, focusing on the role played by music media in people's everyday lives. So he's published on issues of voice media framing, of crises, as well as new forms of televised manipulation. Dr. Rafal studied in Japan at Tohoku University and Ritsumeikan Asia, so very well able to speak about what he's about to do. I won't say too much because he's about to tell you everything, so I'll pass over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Izzy. Well, thank you for this kind introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Rafal Zaborowski, and I'll be speaking about my new book, Music Generation in the Digital Age. Thank you so much for spending this precious afternoon with me today. I'd like to tell a few stories about the book and about my research, and through that maybe take you on a little tour of what I find interesting or fascinating about this. This will be mostly based on the book with some research that is also part of my newest chapter in the Routledge Companion of Media Audiences, where I talk specifically about sort of Vocaloid cultures and the idea of canon and fanon, which I will get to in a second. Now, before we start, can I just ask a very broad question? How many of you are familiar with Japanese popular music, let's say over the last 10, 20 years? Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much. That's roughly half of us. So you might have an unfair advantage in the short quiz that I will start with. I would like to propose, just to whet the palate, a moose bush, so to speak, to propose a quiz. Is this a real Japanese pop lyric, or is it a generative AI poetry, so something I created using ChatGPT? All right? And this will, I hope, give us a flavor of the modern Japanese music industry, I think. So level 1, songs about ordering pizza. In a second, I will give you an example of 2 songs. Well, one of them will be a real song, one of them will be something that came out of ChatGPT. Song A, ordering delivery pizza. I'm always torn. Do I go for large or medium pizza? The excitement of a long phone call, so difficult to hang up afterwards, right? And song B, flipping through the menu, craving a chat, the scent of pizza, a tickle in my heart, crispy crust, sweet memories. As the night goes on, let's not forget this flavor. Now, I'll give you a few seconds, and I will ask you which of this song is the real one, all right? And I'll ask you kindly to raise your hand if you think song A is the real one. Thank you very much. And song B, lovely. I think there was a few more people on song A, and this is in fact the correct answer. This is the 12th single of J-pop idol group Morning Musume, released in July 25, 2001, sold a total of over 600,000 copies. Okay. Level 2, love and astronomy. Oops, sorry. Level 2, love and astronomy, a very common lyric topic. So we have song A and song B again. Song A, I tried to grab the black sky, but it's like a supernova next to the door. To quench my thirst, I'll dance even more. Accept the darkness and the morning will come once again. Holding each other, the key is pump it up. And song B, feeling the rhythm of constellations, don't you? Steps towards the distant future, a white rabbit, a dream floating in space. With the magic of our steps, let's link our hearts, pump it up. Okay, so do you think that the real Japanese lyrics is song A? Please raise your hands kindly. Thank you very much. If it's song B, please raise them. Thank you. Okay, song B is a clear winner. And I have bad news for you, because song A is, of course, Face Down from 2012 by Arashi, because level 3 is Nation and History. Nation History, 2 more songs for you. The scars of war embraced by the warmth of time. With pride in our hearts, turning the stormy history into love and harmony, the curtains of history sway in the unknown night. Versus, boldly revolutionizing in the Western fashion, happy-go-lucky pacifist state, riding a bicycle marked with a Japanese flag, warding off evil spirits, intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's an easy one. Is this song A? Please raise your hands. Thank you very much. Is it song B? Right at the middle. Brilliant. Of course it's song B. Thank you very much for participation. This is probably the most popular virtual idol song or song written for a Vocaloid. So it's a Senbon Sakura, performed by Hatsune Miku, written by Kuro Usa, producer. And how we're doing the last level now is summer homework. Of course, we all know thousands of songs about summer homework. We have all our favorites, but this one, which one of them is real? Song A, at the bottom of my bag, a pile of untouched worksheets. Questions, X plus Y equals CIA? What is the capital of Australia? There isn't one. Where do you live now? Yes, I do. What makes up oxygen, crocodiles, and shampoo? Versus, holding the pen, but my mind's a blank. In the corner of my notebook, drawings of ice cream geography. No map, no idea. I'm sorry, teacher. Forgot my homework. Summer adventures, math formulas turned into stars. Pretty unproblematic, I would say. Song A, is it song A? Is this the real song? Of course it is. Well done. I won't even ask because it just has to be true, right? So this is Juanita Shampoo, Crocodile Shampoo by Momoro Clover Z, which is part which fandom is very rich, intergeneration fandom, fans of all sort of ages. 50,000 people, standard, all families in the whole stadium singing the song about forgetting homework and not knowing what the oxygen is made of. This was a highlight of my fieldwork, one of the many highlights. One of the things that got me interested in this idea of, first of all, intergeneration fandom. Fandoms were engaged, the dances that they do, the audience that comes prepared, the audience that practices those chants and dances online using online tutorials. They do. You have to know, you have to be prepared. And I thought that's something interesting there, which became a kernel of this book. Secondly, the virtual aspect of Japanese music industry. The fact that this is, you might be familiar, some of you, with the band Stopuri, Strawberry Prince, who are represented here by virtual avatars on stage, right? They don't appear on stage, they appear through those virtual avatars. This is earlier this year in the flagship NHK show, Kohaku Utagassen, which is the music show featuring the most popular acts of the year, or at least what the industry thinks they are. And the fact that there is a virtual performer on stage, the fact that these are not real humans on stage, it's really went without a big echo, without big notice, because it wasn't just unusual anymore earlier this year. Because when we look at other acts this year, or acts in previous years in this flagship NHK show, we had already a rich history of virtual performers or holographic singers, of singers dressed like animals, and this year singers that do not show their faces. You see there's this quite strong theme here actually about covering faces, which speaks to, among others, maybe pressures of being an idol and the conflict between the sort of drive for artistic creation and the need to protect one's safety in the age of digital fandom. But we can see all of this, the history over the last 10, even 15 years, a sort of virtual holographic performance made it incorporated into mainstream quite seamlessly. I'll talk about Hibari Misora a second in a few minutes. But so this is where I started. One of them, this very rich music, rich fandom. On the other hand, the development of virtual music, Vocaloid as a sort of new way, as a new approach to the industry, music making, but also listening to music. So in my fieldwork, over a decade, in a few stages of that fieldwork, I've interviewed a lot of people. I've talked to producers. I've talked to management companies, to musicians. I've talked to ordinary people listening to music, families, of different people of different ages. I went to concerts, big and small. I talked to street performers. I went to people's houses and see how they sort of interact with music, how they raise children with music. I went to karaoke with people. I accompanied people on their way home or work and just asked them what they were listening to. I was quite invasive. I was quite annoying, probably, asking people, what is the role of music in your life? What kind of music do you choose? Why? And this became the kernel of the book. And I talk about all of this as sort of social practices of listening. Not just listening, but practices that can be general or personal, and are not only about listening or only about music, but are about how listening and music are integrated, interpreted in social and cultural life. So I'll give a few examples in a second, but I've discovered that in many cases, music is embedded in our lives sort of seamlessly, and things that are important people, even when they are not directly connected to music or listening. And Japan, here, a very interesting country to research in that aspect, in a way that physical media still play a very strong role. We can see here sort of this is the CD renting place. This is the whole sort of Vocaloid section here. Here we can see in a bookstore the range of music-related magazines, which is sort of, in terms of physical formats, that are disappearing, basically, from a global publishing market, are still relatively strong in Japan in terms of music, in terms of CDs, cassette tapes, but also sort of physical print media as well. So physical formats still constitute a majority of sales in Japan. Still fascinating regional phenomenon. I think still in 2022, 2023, generally Asia responsible for almost half of global physical sales of music, and I'll talk about why in a second. And sort of the richness of what people expect from those formats. And some quotes from my research here. Why do you buy physical copies, for example? And this person says, well, none for listening, right? I buy copies of CDs, but none of them are used for listening. One mint copy for the shelf, plus however many copies I need to get the tickets or codes inside, depending on whether I want to support a given act and there's a contest, right? So, of course, buying, this is shared across sort of K-pop fans as well, and many, but usually confined to sort of Asian popular culture, where physical formats come with a lottery ticket or some handshake opportunity with the idol, with the performer. So you need to buy a lot of them, not necessarily for listening, but it does drive the market quite strongly. Secondly, the fact that not sort of analog technology, maybe not analog technology, but sort of older technology in terms of listening devices, in terms of how people listen to music, very, very strong in Japan, that is maybe not talked about enough. So in my sort of more rural focus groups, when I talk to people in smaller cities and towns, when I ask them to bring me, how they listen to music, I was expecting mobile phones. Maybe I wanted to see people's sort of streaming playlists. People, like, for example, like this person said, "Was this what you wanted to bring? This is my portable music player. I take it everywhere." And she did. This person did. Always with her in the car, anywhere. It was like a digital playlist. It was just a pink boombox. And we can talk here about very strong cassette tape, especially Enka, but not only. Market in Japan. If we go, as you might know, to a music store in Japan, there will be a very strong cassette tape section. Some of it driven by farming machines, which have still cassette slots, but not only. But it's also part of it, how we consume and how we talk about music here. And also participants like this one. This is a young person, let's call him Naoki. And Naoki says here, actually, I don't put songs into my iPod. I don't know how to do it, so I don't. I listen to songs that were there before. And of course, I asked, well, how did they end up there, the songs? And he said, well, somebody helped me put them there and just stayed like this. So this is a person for whom Music is very important. Music is a trustworthy companion. It is there with Naoki in almost every aspect of his routine, from early morning through the long commute back and forth, in the evening when he falls asleep. And yet, most of those practices involve music he did not choose himself. It was on an iPod inherited from brother. So it's an interesting situation, right? It's a very important practice. But it's not a focused enjoyment of favorite music. There's a background melodic noise which calms Naoki by its familiarity and repetition. So moving on to playlists, which I discovered. Obviously, we know how important playlists are for people. We know now that globally, most people listen to music through platforms, on platforms mostly through playlists rather than through albums and through artists. That is probably a known fact by now. Obviously, it differs from country to country, on platform to platform, but that is probably the standard. But they do play different roles on individual and generational level. And sometimes asking people, how do you organize your music? What kind of playlist do you put your music into on streaming platform? Can lead to, I think, very interesting stories about work and about stress, like this participant here. I have a playlist for songs, she says. I like to sing at karaoke with friends and family. Another for songs I still need to practice. Then one for the boss and stuff. The boss, I asked. Well, in case we go to karaoke after work or we talk about music and he wants to see songs on my phone, I wasn't asked yet, but oof, I've heard stories, right? So this is a terrible story, obviously, about, invasion of privacy and so lots of sort of stress, work-related stress. But it's a story like many stories, right? We socializing after work in Japan leads to stress, and the fact that sort of this involves a private sphere, such as, well, what do you sing in a karaoke with your boss? You have to have a song that will sort of please the boss in some way. They have to be familiar with it, or at least to be from the range that they can recognize, but it cannot be too plain, right? Because you don't want to appear too boring. You want to be interesting, right? So many people talk to me about this pleasure of sort of performing a sort of having a music taste at the workplace, which they obviously shouldn't have to, right? But they have to in a way, right? So again, social practice of listening, not directly connected to music, and yet revealing so much about what we do through music. What I found, which was quite a surprising finding, that unlike we talk about listeners in other countries as having a sort of generational playlist, like tell me where you were born and I will sort of figure out what kind of music you like, because that would be the music that you grew up with. And obviously, to some extent, this is true in Japan, but more than in other countries and places, my participants of different ages shared a playlist. They will listen to roughly very similar music. What was surprising that they took away very different meanings from that music. They were listening to the same stuff, but they were understanding it very differently. Sometimes they were listening to slightly different stuff just to sort of accentuate, emphasize their generational identity. Like this story, where I am driving in a car with a family, and sort of recounting this experience, a young boy, high school student, Shota, talks about the music that is being listened to in the car. And he says, well, my parents choose the car music. I listen through earphones. And they said, well, some oldies, beats and stuff, says, blah, blah, blah. He says, no, this is what he listens through earphones, right? This one. I said, okay, well, what do your parents listen to in the car? And he says, same music, same one I like. Okay, so why do you listen through headphones and they're listening through the, right? And he says, well, I like some more than the others, right? I like some of them more than the others, right? So there's this very beautiful, bizarre, or maybe, the interesting situation where they're listening to very similar music from the very similar time, but they're doing it separately. One person doing on earphones with a slightly different artist. Maybe one of them is listening to Spitz, and one of them, and then the parents are blasting Sazan. In a sort of not in the context of shared musical interest. The choices are similar, even though routines and modes are not. And many participants also told me how this happens, that those shares playlists, right? This is a person who says, I make my kids like the same music as I do. as long as this lasts, at least. So their favorites are mine, and we can go to listen to Exile or whatever the band is together. We can go to concert. So this idea of conscious raising people in a certain musical tradition, which I'm sure is familiar. I'll skip this part, because I want to talk a little bit about those different meanings that people have from music. And here, when I talked to people who are fans of pop idols, be it boy pop groups or girl pop groups, so I interviewed a lot of them, and I also interviewed a lot of fans of virtual music, right? Vocaloid music that is represented by those holographic artists. And they were usually not conflating. There was, if you're a fan of sort of the real physical girls or boys, you're usually not a fan of the virtualists. There were some that liked both, but usually it's quite distinct. But their answer to why do you prefer one over the other was the same for both groups. They both say, well, this one is real. This one is more real than the other, right? So we can sort of understand, I think, the one side of this argument, right? When the people who are supporting those real girls or boys says, well, in the end, this is just a hologram. I cannot shake her hand. I cannot meet her. She doesn't really exist. And that's how they define their reality. On the other hand, fans of the virtual idols, for them, they raise the ideas of what we might call authenticity in music. They say, well, compared to the real music industry in Japan, where everything is overproduced, where you have old Japanese male producers writing songs for teenagers about first love, controlling their social media accounts, assigning them different personalities. Yeah, you're the quirky one, you're this, yeah, and so on. Compared to this, creating music via Vocaloid, via virtual music industry, sort of bottom-up way of creating music, seems much more genuine and real. And also there's a socio-economic argument as well, because many from my participants, especially those not from large cities, said, well, actually, I don't care if they really exist or not, because I can't afford to go to a concert. I can't afford to sort of go and touch them and sort of handshake, buy a very expensive handshake ticket. So for me, whether she lives and breathes or not, it's actually not a primary concern. And some of this was also represented in sort of, as I said, I think I might skip a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit of this tension, right? The very controlled industry of Japanese idols, and we heard there's similar stories, obviously now with K-pop, with Korean music industry, different, but sort of the idea of management offices, the Jimsho, as controlling blacklisting employees, controlling content and exposure. Versus sort of the promise of Vocaloid, where anybody who buys a piece of software can create a song that gets picked up, that you can be popular, you can skip the sort of the gym show, you can skip the industry pressure and hierarchy. In reality, not really, right? The mainstream and the creative industry adapted very fast in sort of grabbing what's interesting from the indie market, from the bottom-up Vocaloid alternative. So the promise is not exactly fulfilled. And of course, it was also a promise, the virtual music business promised to avoid sort of the darker stories, right, in Japanese music industry. But again, not necessarily worked out. I want to talk just a few minutes about different generations, because in my field work, I talk to people of all ages, but I was mostly interested in two particular generations, sort of the lost generation, so-called, a lost generation, the first post-war Japanese generation, which came out which sort of were looking for jobs when the economic bubble burst, right? So the first generation that had trouble finding lifetime employment, versus the generation right after, sometimes called Yutori Sedai, the lazy generation. I call it relaxed generation because I'm quite positive about them. That was already raised in the narrative of crisis. They don't know the good life. They were already sort of born after the bubble burst. And what I found interesting is that they are both were listening to, let's say, virtual idols or pop music, but they got very different meanings out of it. So for the older cohort, they enjoyed the hierarchy. The hierarchy was there. It's fine that we are voting for those girls. It's fine that the producers control it. It's sort of the natural process of learning and experience, as the participants told me, an order, an effort. If you work hard, you will achieve something. And Hatsune Miku and virtual idols were seen through this history of robotics and virtuality, sort of national motifs, sort of Go Japan, social and gender roles. For the younger cohort, that didn't matter. For them, what they took from those virtual idols mostly was this authenticity I mentioned. Because working hard can be disappointing. Working hard is only good as a reward. And this is a generation that was already disappointed by educational reforms, by how are they seen by mainstream press, which is sort of a very typical sort of Gen Y portrayal of people who want holiday, who don't want to work so hard. So Hatsune Miku here is seen through a protest against their hierarchy for them. A value of individual expression, authenticity, creativity, but also distrust towards power structures. Right, just to finish, I want to say one more fascinating thing about specifically Hatsune Miku. And I think I haven't shown Hatsune Miku. I should have put that earlier, but I think we know. I remember being here in 2012 where Ito Hiroyuki-san was here from Krypton Media, and he was talking about this. It was 12 years ago. And of course, the cultural industry has developed since then. But it's still sort of exciting. It's still sort of about Vocaloid, hologram dancing on stage to people who don't care about the band. There's a band there, but we don't care about the band. We care about this pre-programmed hologram on stage. Again, filling huge arenas all around the world, including London, and Paris, New York, and so on. Now, what I find interesting about this is that when you buy a piece of Vocaloid, right, you learn very little about who this virtual idol is. You basically are buying a voice synthesizer that allows you to create a vocal track for your music. And you've learned that this person is not actually, this is not actually a voice synthesizer, but it's a virtual idol that will sing to you whatever you want her to sing about, and you learn just very basic information about her. And I think just because you learned so little about her, it's easy then for fans to create certain narratives about their characteristics and personality. And this appeared to me when I was in a karaoke room with a bunch of high schoolers, and they were singing this song. And the song is sort of typical, one of the more famous Hatsune Miku songs, called Melt. And these are the lyrics of Melt. I wake up in the morning, the first thing on my mind is you. I decide to cut my fringe because I want you to ask me about it. Pink skirt, a flower in my hair, I'm going out, and I'm just so cute today. There's not much to that, right? Lyrically. We cannot misinterpret the song, right? We sort of know that the song is about a person getting ready for a date, trying to look attractive. And of course, the people, the high school boys, I sing it with me and says, no, you don't get the song. This is a trick song. It's not the real Miku. It's not the Hatsune Miku, the real Hatsune Miku. She's being playful here. She tries to be more cutesy, girly with the pink dress and all because she likes that one boy. But that's not who she is. It's just a ruse. That's a facade. Look at the last part. And of course, I wait for the last part. And they say, I melt. This is the song, the last part of the lyrics. I melt. I want to walk holding hands with you. Is it good time already? Hug me now. Or something, which in Japanese is nantene. And they say, this is the key to the song. He says, see, she was pretending for the whole song that she's this kind of cute, preppy girl, but she's not. Hatsune Miku is cool, right? But she kind of liked this boy, so she tried to pretend that she's cheerful and kind of very girly, but she's not. And the facade is down, the mask is down with this nantene, or something. You can see that this was all a ruse. And I thought it was just two boys that overthink this song. But it's not, right? The internet, and I'm giving English examples, and there are many more on Japanese social media, and discussion boards where people very, sometimes civilly, sometimes quite violently, discuss and argue about the personalities of virtual idols and what kind of songs might fit a particular character, how to write a song for Hatsune Miku or for other Vocaloid based on what they think is personality. These are heavily debated. They are heavily contextualized within fan culture, and they are sort of a driving factor for how new songs are created and how fandom reacts to them. And my argument here is that my idea is that this all happens because we learn so much. There's very little canonical information on the box. So fans, there's a lot of gaps for fans to be filled and work together. And working together in a fan community is fun. And this is very different. And I come back to here to Mr. Ahibari, who, as you might know, a very famous enka singer who passed away some years ago, but was revived using AI technology for one of the Kohaku shows on NHK, and sang this new song with AI technology and performed as a hologram. Now, this didn't go very well. This didn't go very well because we know a lot about this person when she was alive. She was very famous, and many fans didn't like that she appeared on this show because she was famously conflicted with the NHK towards the end of her life. So for some fans, some vocal fans on the internet, this was like a slap in the face to fandom. It's like, no, she wouldn't have done that if she was alive, right? So in other words, this information, the canon about this person, created tensions, created certain barriers to how audiences received it, versus Hatsune Miku, where we have we don't know much about her. There's the lack of dominant canonical voice combined with the virtuality, which aids audiences' voices and self-reflection, which I thought was really, really interesting. Right. I said I'm finishing, and I'm really finishing, but I just want to say the producers and artists' point of view as well. So what do producers think about the virtual idols? You would think they don't like this bottom-up system, but they actually love it. They said, yeah, they can't surprise us with unexpected boyfriend and other scandals, right? Because they're virtual. We don't have to control, we don't have to fight over controlling their social media. We don't have to keep screening their personal blogs for any scandals. It's fun. We control. They're virtual, right? They can't do anything bad. So as long as we sort of keep track on the industry, as long as we know what's popular and offer these very talented bottom-up producers that make virtual songs the right money and the right deal, we can easily control it. It's much safer than having real people. For musicians, sometimes it's troublesome. The fact that people are so heavily discussing these ideas online about which Vocaloid has which personality. For some artists, this is a barrier. This person who is semi-known Vocaloid music producer says, it ended up being troublesome. The more I thought about it, what if I get it wrong? I mean, sort of writing the song for the wrong Vocaloid based on the personality. I mean, there is no wrong, but then again, obviously there is. Maybe if I don't know about those online discussions, it would get easier. But without those discussions, I would never get a Vocaloid copy in the first place, right? So it's a person second-guessing themselves. He says, yeah, well, it's a different thing than writing for real people, right? You have this freedom of doing whatever you want because it's a virtual idol, but you're constrained by the online discussions. You're constrained by what fandom thinks about the personality of each artist, which are new and interesting tensions. I think I'll finish here quite abruptly. This and many more stories in my book. As you mentioned, there's a 40% discount on it, which takes the price from ridiculous to just very expensive. So if you can afford it, please do order for your libraries. If you cannot afford it, especially if you're a student, just email me. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure and honor to be at Daiwa Foundation. Thank you.